And as AI continues to change our world, Christians in the tech industry are being called to pray, think, reflect, and discuss how their worldview needs to meet these challenges. In fact, there are communities spreading all over the world, and they are working on what they call kingdom tech innovations. And our guest today will help us shine light on this fluid and challenging aspect of today's world, not to mention the future and what that may look like. Adrian Tam is the Regional Manager of Faith Tech, and he joins us in the studio today. Adrian, welcome.
Hey, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to have you here, Adrian. You're all the way from Sydney, visiting Vegas. Are you very familiar with Brisbane?
Look, I've been here a couple of times, but the weather is a draw card for sure, escaping the long Sydney winter. It's been a colder winter than normal, that's for sure.
Yeah, it sure is a lot warmer up here, brother. I grew up in Sydney, but I must say I love the Brisbane winters. But, we're going to talk about AI and faith tech today. Give me your brief synopsis on what is going on with AI and how is this a challenge to the Christian church today?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, AI, depending on who you talk to, it's a very polarizing subject. I think some people are extremely excited about it, and I think for good reason, all the possibilities in terms of what it means for our day-to-day living, for your business, for productivity, all these different things. But it's moving at a pace that I think we're finding it hard to keep up with in terms of even regulation. We're building the plane in the sky, right? And I think innovation is happening so quickly now that people are now kind of reacting and going, what does this mean for, like so many different things. And I think if you talk to Christians in particular, I think the polarizing views get even more acute in the sense that some people say, it's part of the end times, or we've got to reject this wholesale. There's a lot of fear as well. And so I think we do need people who are informed, who know the technology side of things, but also can weave that in with theology and practical wisdom. In some ways, there's nothing new under the sun. So it might be a new iteration of technology, but a lot of things about it are actually really familiar if you dig a little bit deeper. But I think as Christians, we do need to engage with it in a really thoughtful and measured way. So.
Yeah, really good answer. I mean, there's so many examples of, like you said, in history when technology came along and Christians either embraced it or rejected it.
Right.
I think of TV. I mean, apparently when TV came along, a lot of pastors preached against it in the States and said it's evil, it's of the devil, and it's the hell-o-vision and all the rest of it. But obviously, those who did that dismissed it, but down the track, others used television as a medium to preach the gospel. So it was neither good nor bad, was it? It was either an opportunity or something to be ignored and possibly a missed opportunity for the church.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, that's right. And I heard one preacher many years ago talk about kind of this threefold approach to how you engage with anything in culture. It's receive, reject, or redeem. Right? Some things you can just adopt it wholesale. It's part of the common grace of God in creation. We go, okay, as Christians, we love this and we can take it and use it as is. Some things we just outright reject. It's completely not of God. It's sinful and we should have nothing to do with it. But other things, we can adopt it and redeem it. And I think if you look at the narrative of Scripture, God's in the business of redeeming broken things, and that's the trajectory of where we're heading, right? It's heaven coming to earth. It's God renewing all of creation. And I would say technology in general, and AI in particular, falls squarely in that category. How do we see the opportunities that are hidden within it, whilst stepping through the landmines, of which there are many, I think. But the opportunities, I think, are very exciting.
Yeah, I really like that. It's refreshing to hear you talk about it because there are some concerns. But you think about the Amish in America, that sect. Right. I think they came out of Holland.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still on horse and carts and they're still not using technology. They definitely don't have iPhones.
Sure.
And, probably for them it's great. Like they love their little community. But at the end of the day, if we analyse it, they haven't really reached the world in the last 200 years. It's not like they've shaken the world for Jesus. And so you got to ask yourself, is their choice to reject all technology, is it bearing fruit for the kingdom? And I'd say no. It actually isn't. And so we do need to be careful today, don't we, that we don't dismiss AI. But having said all that, let me paint a scenario for you. So recently I heard about a gentleman on the Gold Coast who actually did a worship album using AI. So there's no real singers, there's no musicians. A robot has actually made a worship album. What are your thoughts on that?
How fascinating. I mean, firstly, I'd love to hear how it sounds. I'm sure, if you get rid of all the imperfections of people singing off tune, people not being on beat, I'm sure there's going to be a precision to it, which is pretty impressive. Look, I think the reality is that behind every AI is a human being as well, right? And so I think, worship is a very sacred thing in the sense that it's not just about the noise and sounds that you make, but it's offering our hearts to the Lord. And so I think if worship becomes a highly manufactured, auto-tune's maybe the same kind of thing, right? Where if it becomes so polished where you actually remove some of the soul element of it, if you like, I think you can begin to lose the significance and the purpose of it. That being said, how far does that argument go? So, is a microphone, which I'm using right now, which you're using right now, is that somehow unhelpfully augmenting worship in such a way that God no longer pleased? No, I don't think so. I think it's about the heart of what you offer. But I think the danger with a lot of technology is if we're trying to remove some of the rough edges from our expression to God, I think maybe we're missing the point a little bit there, because I think you can unhelpfully buy into this narrative that God only wants a version of us, which is the polished, finished product. And that's just, there's nothing about that's true. I think all throughout Scripture you see God accepts us as we are. God wants the raw. You read the Psalms in particular, and you see there's I often read the Psalms and I'm like, I don't think you're allowed to say that. But that's why it's so refreshing. And I think, so look, I think there's lots of ways that AI could probably help with worship and production and different things like that. But the heart of it, I think, should be preserved, whatever that looks like. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you said, what does it sound like? It probably sounds like R2-D2 out of Star Wars, worshipping God. But you just think, I mean, you look at it from God's perspective, like you push a button and a robot starts singing to God. Right. I can't imagine he's that impressed, because obviously worship is about connecting our hearts to Him, and adoring Him and loving Him. Yeah. So I don't think he's impressed. I suppose we could impress other humans with AI-generated worship because, like you said, it sounds good. Right. So it is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, personally, obviously, you got to go with your conviction. My conviction is you can't worship God with AI. I mean, you can perfect, like you said, but everyone's going to have their convictions on it. And in about 10 minutes, we are going to open up the talkback lines, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this. Yeah. What do you think about AI-generated worship? What do you think about AI-assisted preaching even? Because, Adrian, you can probably fill our audience in better than I can, but it's my understanding that you can almost make an avatar now who can look like you and sound like you, and the avatar can actually preach in your place. So if I had multiple campuses in my church, for example, I could get an avatar to basically preach in those campuses, and the people would think it was me preaching, but it would actually be an AI-generated bot. That's pretty scary too, isn't it?
Sure, yeah. And in some ways, that question is very similar to, I think, when multi-site church kind of first blew up on the scene. I think a lot of people had concerns about it, because it's like, okay, there's a preacher with particular gifts, and let's just beam them out to every location around a particular region. But I think a lot of the concerns was that actually is preaching just about communicating ideas, or is it about a person who knows and loves their people, their congregation, speaking to them as someone that's caring for them and loving them? And so I think it's the same kind of argument. Like, I think if it's just a means of, let's get this message to as many people as possible, sure, AI could help that. And I think there's a part of, evangelism and proclamation, which is that. But if preaching is about loving, shepherding people, it's very hard to do that in a way that's detached from, personhood. And I think AI can kind of fall into that trap a little bit there. So
yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Really interesting. I mean, I got to put it out there. AI helps me preach. I do a podcast, and a friend of mine edits it for me, and he turns it into a 1-minute short for YouTube, and that's all AI doing that. Sure. So the AI actually turns my 5-minute message into a 1-minute message and sticks it on TikTok and YouTube every week. So it's still me preaching, but AI has managed to cut out what it believes is all the boring stuff or the irrelevant stuff, and just got the meat of the message in there. So I guess I'm already using it, so I can't be criticizing it or complaining about it, that's for sure.
Sure. Yeah, and shout out one of my friends in the US, his name's Michael Whittle. He's got a platform called Pulpit AI, and I think because of the name of that platform, a lot of people thought, you're just getting AI to write people's messages and this is not good. But basically what his tool does is similar to what you were saying. So they kind of take sermon content. The idea being that, most pastors spend who knows how many hours preparing a message, but then it's preached in 30 minutes and then it's gone into oblivion.
Yeah.
But what if you could take that content, inject it into some kind of AI engine, and then it repurposes into all these different types of content, connect group studies, social media assets, all these different things. And their heart is to how do we amplify the voice of the local church pastor and deepen discipleship. And I'm thinking that's a great way to apply, AI.
Well, it is. That is a great shout out too. What's the name of that organisation?
Yeah, so it's Pulpit AI.
Pulpit AI?
Yeah, so I think the website is pulpitai.com. They've just launched recently, based in the US, but obviously available internationally. And it's, great service. So.
Yeah, well, I love the concept, especially for a smaller church. Like I said,
totally.
The pastor spends hours preparing this 30-minute message. You can get a blog out of that. You can get study for your small groups. You can get some social media posts. And, without having to hire someone. Brilliant.
Yeah, totally.
Pulpit AI. Well, that is a good shout out. But, Adrian, let me ask, what is your heart on this right now? Like, what are you really sensing in you? Because you're not just a tech guy. That's what I like about you. You're also a pastor yourself, and you've been involved in ministry for many years.
Yeah.
So what is your heart with AI right now? What do you feel like God's saying to you?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is I see the opportunity it presents for both evangelism and discipleship. If you look back throughout church history, there's often a correlation between significant technological advancements and the gospel going out to more people and to, people in deeper ways. You think about the Roman road, so this very complex travel system that was implemented just before Jesus, walked the earth, and how much that accelerated the spread of the gospel around the known world at the time. You think about, radio technology, which we're using right now, and how that really amplified the voice of so many radio evangelists and printing press. You can go on. And I think it's very hard to not see AI in that same category. What could this technology mean for the gospel going out to more people and deepening discipleship? So I think that's what excites me. I remember I've done lots of kind of different personality tests and all that kind of thing, and I often come out as a futurist. And so I've always had a bent to think, what's next? And look, AI is not what's next, it's what's here. And it's not even a new technology anymore. It's been around for a long time. And I think if Christians can wisely, yes, but also courageously venture into this space and go, let's harness all that this gift has for us, for the church. Could we reach people much faster than we thought was possible? I think some of the most exciting applications of AI is actually, Bible translation, getting it into the hands of people that we previously couldn't, at a pace which also we couldn't have imagined previously.
Now, that's a really good point because, in the old days, because I've lived in Papua New Guinea, so there's about 600 or 800 different languages up there, I think. And in the old days, Bible translators would go and park themselves in a village setting for a few years, learn the language, and then slowly, meticulously translate the scriptures into the local language. And you're right, using ChatGPT now, you can actually just get translations really quickly, can't you?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's amazing. That is an amazing opportunity for the church right there, isn't it, using AI?
Yep. Yeah, totally. And another example, this is a faith tech story, but there was a faith tech community in North America, and they partnered with a mission organization called Share Bibles. And basically it was a guy who was in a third world kind of community and doing kind of door-to-door evangelism, giving out Bibles. But he one of his struggles was that he didn't have a systematic way of tracking. Let's say he would knock on a door, but no one was home, and then he'd have to go back and kind of measure and track all of that. And so a bunch of technologists built a platform for him to help that whole process. And because of that technology, they've seen an exponential, jump in the number of Bibles that have been given out and people getting to know Jesus. And so those kinds of things where you go, you're partnering with a human individual. The work hasn't changed fundamentally, but you are accelerating, the work of ministry. And things like that really excite me. So.
Yeah, well, I love it. I love your heart, Adrian. And I'd love to just ask our listeners right now, if you've got a question for Adrian, maybe you've got a comment. There's no right or wrong today. Do you have an issue with churches using AI? Do you have an issue with pastors using AI? What do you think about the guy on the Gold Coast who just did an AI-generated worship album? I'm actually going to try and interview him shortly as well.
Yeah.
Not today, but at some point, because that's just a fascinating concept in itself. But Adrian Tam is from Faith Tech, and it's a new initiative in Australia. It came from Canada originally, and it's a bunch of tech people who work in the tech industry, but they're also believers, and they're starting to fellowship together and have meetings together just to encourage one another on their journey. And there's actually a soft launch in Brisbane tonight. And if you want to find out more about Faith Tech, their website is faithtech.com. So go through that website, faithtech.com. They've had one meeting in Sydney already. There's another one coming up. But Adrian, have you got any final thoughts before we round up the conversation today?
Yeah, look, I think to anyone who's listening, I think be praying for this industry. I think it's an industry of great opportunity, but also lots of dangers and challenges, and pray for people in your world who might be in that space. And like I said earlier, if you were listening, if you're in this industry in some way, we'd love to connect with you. As Andrew said, head to our website. Let's chat further and see how we can support you in your journey, and we'd love to include you in our plans. So.
And Adrian Tam from Faith Tech, I would like to thank you for joining us on 2020 today.
Thanks so much.